What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to another video. And in today's video, we're going to be talking about the latest installment into the new DC universe that we're going to be starting up, and this one is called Blue Beetle. Directed by Manuel Soto and written by dunnet-alcocer, this film stars people like Xolo Maridueña, Bruna Marquezine, George Lopez, Susan Sarandon, Raul Max Trujillo, and many more. Hey guys, and welcome to my review of the latest installment into the DC universe, this time Blue Beetle. This is the movie that when I found out it was being made, I was incredibly excited for it. This is a character that I've been reading in the comics for many years, who's appeared in animated form, in some live action things, and not necessarily the best way, but honestly, it's just a character I've always loved from the comics. And when I heard this movie was coming to fruition, I was incredibly excited. And it was originally, if I remember correctly, meant to be an HBO Max movie, something that was going to go straight to streaming, and then they announced that it was actually going to be getting a theatrical release, which made me even more excited. And then when I heard that Xolo Maridueña from Cobra Kai was going to be in it, which is a show that I've covered here on the channel up to this point and really thoroughly enjoy, yeah, I really was excited to see him in the role. I was excited to see what they would do with the character, and as the trailer started to roll out, I was just more and more excited for this movie. Now, going into the movie, I had this feeling that it was going to be a pretty straightforward comic book movie that was going to have a lot of those familiar tropes, that was going to have predictability, but at least be a good fun time. And I'm happy to say I actually really enjoyed this film. Now, while this film is filled with a lot of those superhero tropes and some things that will just add a layer of familiarity and predictability to this movie, I ultimately just found this to be a feel-good comic book action movie that had a lot of really great moments, a lot of great humor, and most notably had a really great central theme of family that is something I can really relate to. I'm Hispanic myself, even though this film is about Mexicans and my family is Cuban, Puerto Rican. It was really nice to see that Hispanic family dynamic. I think that they really captured it really well here. I thought the cast was fantastic throughout, and I think that even for where this film is a little bit weak in its narrative and a little bit convenient or just traditional, familiar, and not maybe all that original at times, where this film really does have its strengths is in the family dynamic. And I just wanted to praise that right out of the top, because that was what kept me completely hooked into this movie from beginning to end. Now, a lot of you probably don't know who Blue Beetle is, because he's not really a very well-known DC character. You kind of have to be a little bit more into the world of DC to be familiar with the character of Blue Beetle. Similar to films like Ant-Man, they're taking a more modern approach to the character, giving us one of the newer iterations of the character from the comic books versus the original films. In the Ant-Man film, you have Scott Lang, but then you have Hank Pym, who's the original one. And this film focuses on the character of Jaime Reyes, which is a more modern version of the Blue Beetle character. And something I really enjoyed about this film is that they actually do kind of touch on some of the history of the character prior to the iteration that we're watching here, which was really exciting as a longtime fan of the series. I also want to say as well, there are two post-credit scenes for the film that I think you should definitely stick around for. The first one being more important for where the franchise and where this set of characters is going to be going moving forward, with the second one being more of a gag one, if I'm completely honest. I feel you can kind of skip the second post-credit scene if you wanted to, but the first one, the mid-credit scene, is definitely the one that's gonna get you hyped up at least for what's to come. So the movie opens and we're focusing on the character of Jaime Reyes, who's coming back from college. He's just graduated. He's excited to be coming back to his family. His family lives in poverty, and he comes home to find out that things have actually gotten worse, as they now are going to be losing their home due to lack of funds. And he assumes coming back with this degree that he's going to be able to get a good job to be able to help support his family so that they don't lose their family home. But of course, like a lot of us in the real world have realized, it's not that easy, and that degree is just a paper that a lot of times won't actually get you the job in the career field that you want. So he struggles alongside his family for finances, and when he's actually trying to go get a job, he ends up running into somebody named Jenny, who says that she would give him a job at this industry called Cord Industries. Yeah, she pretty much puts this device in his hand, says, I need you to take care of this. She's trying to actually smuggle it out of this corporation to keep it out of the hands of Susan Sarandon's character, and we're going to get into that in just a moment. And it ends up being this little blue sky scarab that chooses the character of Jaime to be the new Blue Beetle. It connects to him, it starts to form a suit over his body, and now he is the superhero Blue Beetle, and him and his family are at the center of the crosshairs of this corporation who want to use this device to create, you know, just suits of armor for just all-in-one kind of armor kind of thing. Similar to stuff we've seen in other movies, very similar to something we saw in Ant-Man, like I mentioned before. And in a lot of ways, this film actually reminded me of a mashup of something like Spider-Man Homecoming, as well as Iron Man 2 in the best ways. Now, I mentioned that Susan Sarandon's in this film. She plays a character named Victoria Cord, who runs this cord industry alongside people like the character of Jenny, who's played by Bruna Marquezine. And Susan Sarandon's character is pretty much the big bad who owns a corporation, wants to create a bunch of suits of armor. She wants to create weaponry. And Jenny, who is the daughter of a man who once kind of worked alongside Susan Sarandon's character, doesn't want the company to be something that's all about weaponry. That's not what her father wanted to do before he passed away. But Susan Sarandon, of course, plays that typical corporate villain that just wants power, that just wants the device that's needed to create the stronger power. And alongside her, she has her henchman, who's actually the one that Blue Beetle fights in the movie, Carapax, or as known in the comics, the Invincible Man. He was played by Raul Max Trujillo. And for the most part, I think that Susan Sarandon and Raul do a great job in the film in terms of their performances, but the script really gives them nothing. This is without a doubt the weakest part of the film, the most convenient, the most traditional, the most just cookie cutter. We've seen it, we've done it. It's just something that's completely overdone in the comic book movie genre, where you have this corporate overlord villain who has their henchman who ends up as actually being the one who fights the hero of the movie. We've seen it time and time again, and when it comes to the villain aspect of this film, it was predictable, and it was, quite frankly, the weakest part of this film. And that's the base premise of the film. It's pretty straightforward, and you've seen it before. And what I can say about this film is that it is predictable. There's nothing about this film that necessarily overly surprised me on a narrative level, but it had charm. I really thoroughly enjoyed the characters. I enjoyed the time spent with all the characters. I really enjoyed a lot of the action and the visuals. I really enjoyed the Blue Beetle suit as well, which is pretty accurate to what we have in the comic books, but most notably is mostly practical. Of course, there are big segments of the film that utilize a lot of CGI in the action sequences, but I felt like all the visuals of the film were really solid. If you had any issues with the shirt I'm wearing right now, the Flash movie, and those visual effects, I'm happy to say that the visual effects in this film I found to be a lot more consistent with the tone of the film, but also just a lot cooler to look at. And I felt like the practical costume, the practical suit that Xolo Maridueña was wearing in this film was so cool. I saw it in tons of like set photos that were released as well. I just consistently was really into the aesthetic of Blue Beetle in this film, which lent itself to a lot of really great visuals when it came to action and a lot of just really cool looking moments. There are some cool cinematic moments in here with Blue Beetle that if you're a fan of the character or you're a fan of comic book movies in general, there's no way that your little geeky side can't at least just, you know, have a smirk at just how good a lot of these shots in the film look. Overall, this is a well shot, fun action movie with a nice family narrative at the center that had a lot of really great humor, specifically around the character of Uncle Rudy, played by George Lopez, who honestly stole the show for me. He was so funny in this film. Really thoroughly enjoyed the time spent with him. While the villain element of this film is super generic, while a lot of the overall story, you know, definitely leans into those general comic book movie tropes and things that we've seen time and time again, I ultimately really enjoyed the ride. You know, this was a good, fun popcorn film that had me smiling throughout, had me laughing throughout, had me, you know, predicting where things were going to go, but ultimately kept me excited to see this character introduced into more films as time goes on. James Gunn kind of confusingly said that this is not the first film in the DCEU, the new timeline that we're going to be focusing on, but that this is the first character for the new DCEU. So while it's not meant to be the start of the overall narrative that we'll be following in James Gunn's DCEU, this iteration of Blue Beetle will continue on in that timeline of movies. So this is technically the first character within the universe, even though it's not the first movie within the universe narratively. I don't really know how much sense that makes, but what I can say is I think it's a really good stepping off point for this character. It set things up in an exciting way. And again, I just really enjoyed the charm of the family element of this film. I can definitely rewatch this movie again. It's got that fun rewatchability for me, even if it does have those really just generic comic book movie elements. So I feel like I've been a little bit all over the place here. here. It's a little hot in here, I'm not gonna lie, so I feel like I'm rambling a little bit, but I hope you guys enjoyed hearing my thoughts on the movie, and I definitely want to hear what you guys have to say on Blue Beetle. Did you like the movie? Did you not like the movie? I think that this is a film that's gonna work for a lot of casual moviegoers. I think if you're just a casual comic book moviegoer and you just want a good popcorn film to kind of shut your mind off, have a laugh, especially if you're Hispanic like myself, and you can catch on to a lot of little small references that are made by the family, then I think there's gonna be a lot of fun to be had. But if you're somebody who's looking for something new and different and always looking for innovation when it comes to the comic book movie genre, then I don't necessarily think you're going to be blown away by this movie. Those are my thoughts on the movie. Definitely can't wait to hear what you guys have to say about it. So leave any and all comments down below. Hit that like button, subscribe for more videos, and I'll see you beautiful people in the next one. Bye-bye.